The former owners of the Orrington Waste Facility, where fire has burned since last week, are suing the property's current owner. Penobscot Energy Recovery Center, or PERC, filed the lawsuit against Eagle Point Energy Center on Friday. At the center of PERC's complaint are municipal waste disposal contracts. PERC says those contracts were not part of the sale, despite EPEC's claims they assumed the agreements. PERC also claims there were additional items on the property worth about $2 million that were not included in the sale, and EPEC has improperly taken control of those items and in some cases sold them. PERC is seeking financial damages. They're also pushing back against EPEC's claims that PERC is responsible for the fire by leaving behind the trash pile that ignited. PERC says the facility was sold as is, and EPEC was aware of the risks. PERC also alleges they had equipment and staffing to mitigate fire risk, and EPEC did not maintain those same standards. Now, EPEC responded with the following statement this afternoon, saying in part, "We have heard these allegations from the former owners of the facility in the past, and while baseless, we feel comfortable letting this be resolved with the applicable regulatory agencies and the courts."